You are welcome to this particular video, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through the journey, the message, and the lessons, as well as the spiritual insights about Joseph's story in the Bible, which was recorded in the account of Genesis. I'm going to be taking this story from Genesis 37, which we start to look from the aspect whereby Joseph had two separate dreams. It was two separate dreams he had, one of which talks about their chefs having different chefs, his brothers, whom Joseph's chefs were stood up and his own brothers' chefs bowed to his own. First, he shared this particular dream with them, but they didn't take it lightly. Second dream again he had, this one was about the moon, the sun, which he saw his brothers as well bowing down. So it was like, are you trying to say we are going to be bowing down to you? Even when he shared it with his father was like scolding him about the interpretation of the dream, saying, do you mean myself, your brother's mom, and all your brothers are going to be bowing down to you? Proceeding from this particular aspect, you will see that his brothers, even his dad, were not pleased with his dream. But this was something the Lord was trying to show to Joseph. And now, why some people might look at it and the aspect of why was he going there to share his dream with his brothers, knowing well that this dream was in favor of him and against like his brothers. Maybe he was naive, I will put it that way. But this was the Lord's doing. For him to as well share this particular dream, which he was supposed to keep for himself, it was still the Lord's direction and guidance for him to do that. Now, you will see that at the end of the day, his brothers planned, they hated him, they disliked him, they planned that they are going to kill him when his father sent Joseph to go and check on his brothers who were taking care of the sheep. He went there and they planned they are going to sell him, they are going to kill him initially, but their eldest brother, who was Reuben, he said, no, let's not kill him. Let his blood be upon us. Let's do this, let's do this. And that was how they agreed. And they said we were going to throw him in the pit. It was a well in the wilderness. There was no water in it. And that was how they did it. And later on, they saw people, which were the Ishmaelites, coming. And that was how they took Joseph out and said, let's rather sell him instead of us killing him in that particular well. That was how they took him out again, and they decided to sell him. Now, they sell him to those people who were going to Egypt, those Ishmaelites who were going to Egypt at that particular time. They sold him, and that was how they took Joseph out of the wilderness and took him to Egypt. Now, let's move down to Genesis 39, chapter 39. You will see that now at chapter 39, Joseph now was sold to Potiphar, who was a captain to Pharaoh. And this was where Joseph's story started. Now, if you read from 39 going downward, you will now see that everything started going well in the house of his master, who was Potiphar at that time. If you read the account, the Bible tells us that the man started, everything was working in his favor, everything was proper because there was God with Joseph. God was with Joseph. And even Potiphar noticed it and he made him in charge of everything in his house. You can see that now, from the beginning, there was something that was pursuing Joseph that was with him. Imagine in his master's house, the favor of the Lord came upon him and his master started getting a lot of favor. He was prospering in everything and he realized it. He valued Joseph until devil still came to still attack using Potiphar's wife. Now, let's come back to the real sense of the whole thing. You will see that the trial Joseph faced for his brother, it was as if it was going from bad to worse, right? But now it was still God taking him from grace to grace, but in a disguised manner. Just picture it. If this thing were happening to you, you would take it as a bad ordeal or the Lord has forsaken you. Now, drive down to that particular scene. Pharaoh's wife came with the favor, everything Joseph was flourishing in Potiphar's house. His wife came and started tempting him to sleep with her, to lie with her, and Joseph refused. And you can see that Joseph was a man that has God. He has that fear of God till he was able to tell Potiphar, this thing is not good. This is what my master has done for me so far. He has trusted me. I cannot do this. I cannot betray him. This is where the fear of God also comes in your own journey, because now we are not even talking about, we are talking about the fear of God. Now we're not just talking about your just a random journey. We are talking about a journey going with God. Joseph was aligning with the will of God. So this was what made God to still go with him all the phases he was passing through. Now you see that at the end of the day, he refused and Potiphar has set him up, and then that was where his journey into the prison, into Pharaoh's prison, started again. His master, Potiphar, was disappointed in him. He pushed him now into the prison of where Pharaoh's prisoners were being kept. They put him in that particular place as well, because Potiphar was the captain of Pharaoh. Now you can see like it was as if the whole thing was going from bad to worse. How he started from his brothers betraying him. Now he went into Pharaoh's prison. That was how God said, now I'm the one taking you there as well. Now let's check now from the book of Genesis 40. From 39 now we are moving on to chapter 40. This was where he went into the prison, where he was kept. Now there was something that then happened which brought the chief butler and the baker of Pharaoh to that particular prison as well. You can see how God was orchestrating everything, aligning everything with his people's and divine destiny. Those people came there. They had dreams at the end of the day, because now if you check, even before those people came, they said Joseph was put in charge of that prison again. Everything was in his care, in his hands. He was controlling things in that place. You can see how leadership and God's purpose for his life was pursuing even inside prison, because he had the fear of God and the grace of God was upon him. And because he refused to compromise, that was what landed him in prison. And now, because of his obedience to God, it took him to where his favor was. Imagine if he has obeyed Pharaoh's wife wish. We can think about where he would have landed. Maybe it would have been death automatically, but it landed him into prison where God was taking him to. Now he went and met the chief butler and the baker of Pharaoh's kingdom in that particular prison as well. Now they had dreams, two of them, which he now interpreted to them. Now you can see that now his application of his gifts. Now this is where the place of gift has come, your potentials, something God has placed in you. Joseph discovered it and he was using it. He didn't hide it. Our gifts are instruments from God for you to do divine exploit and to go higher in life. Now something happened. He interpreted their dreams. He didn't hide his potentials. The first one, it was a positive for the butler, but for the baker, which he saw that the dream was good, he said to unleash his own, to tell Joseph his own dream, and the interpretation was bad. And just the way the Bible recorded that from that Genesis 40, that at the end of the day, it happened just the way Joseph said it, the dream interpretation. Now, this was where using of gifts was able to lift Joseph ahead, which he didn't knew, but this was what God was planning. Now, after some time, the chief butler was released from that prison, just the way Joseph interpreted the dream, and the other one was killed. Now, in the chapter 41, Pharaoh, they say after 2 years, that means Joseph was in prison, still in prison at that particular time. Pharaoh now had a dream from Genesis 41 going on. That was when Pharaoh had a dream, which he didn't know the interpretation. He called all his magicians or everyone that could interpret dream for him, but nobody could. This was where God was planning the breakthrough for Joseph. That only you can do this, and I want to lift you to your next level. Now imagine someone, the now imagine the chief butler that was in prison who Joseph interpreted the dream. He was the one that now called Joseph. That now this is where also our destiny helpers come in. We can see that Joseph was able to offer something first before his destiny helper could recognize this value in Joseph to refer him to Pharaoh when nobody could interpret the dream. So you can see that in life, your potentials, your gifts, if you don't use them, most times in helping first, you might remain unknown and anonymous. Even your destiny helper cannot help you, cannot even discover you. This was what made Joseph to be referred to Pharaoh, because he did something before for that chief butler, and that was how the chief butler referred that I know someone that could do this, that could interpret this particular dream you had. That was how the king invited Joseph out of prison and tell him to interpret this. If you read the story now, you now see that Pharaoh's dream was interpreted, and in fact, he realized that this was a divine interpretation by the Spirit of God at work in Joseph. You can see that the power of God was fully manifesting in Joseph. And Joseph as well was not somebody that was slacking. He was using his potential to the fullest, because the grace of God was also pushing him. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of heights or levels in life you cannot get without aligning yourself with the will of God or with the divine direction or guidance of God. You can see this practically in the life of Joseph. Now, if you check, you will now see that Joseph, the glory of Joseph started manifesting. He was in charge of the whole kingdom of Egypt. A lot of things. This one interpreted this. He was not the strategist in charge of everything. How he made Egypt the land, because famine was coming according to the dream of Pharaoh. Famine was coming, and the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. Joseph saw all this, he interpreted it, and that was how Egypt was able to prepare against this particular period. Egypt was not the land of savior to a lot of lives, and Joseph was now the chief in charge of everything. That was how his glory in Egypt dominated. But now this is not where we are driving to. We are driving beyond this, which where I'm going now is the role he played, the role of betrayal, how he took the betrayal of his journey. His brothers sold him. They betrayed him. Everything that was happening to him was because his brothers caused it. They orchestrated everything. But how did he react to this particular thing? Because the famine became very severe. His father, Jacob, his brothers, they were living in Canaan, in the land of Canaan. The land, everything, Egypt was flourishing with goods, with a lot of plenty. When the famine started, the land of Canaan, there was no food. His father couldn't just stay there and allow everything for them to die. He sent his brothers. Now, this is where we shift to chapter 42. I want us to pick some few lessons regarding how to handle betrayal, how to look spiritually beyond the physical betrayal in our particular lives. Because this was what Joseph did. The wisdom of God was at work in him. A lot of things happened after his brother started coming. You can see that from that particular 42, when his father, Jacob, started sending his brother to the land of Egypt to come and meet him to buy food. He recognized them. He knew them. He would have taken revenge. He would have done a lot of things to them at his particular position that time. They were now at his mercy. The dream was now coming to pass. But there was a lot of things he did that should serve as lessons to a lot of believers today, for you and me. And this is one of the crucial message of this particular video. Now, let's go to that particular from 42 now, where he started sending his brothers to Egypt to go and buy food because of the famine that was eating up the land. Now, you will see that when they get to Egypt, Joseph was able to recognize his brothers. Reading from Genesis 42, he was able to recognize them. He knew them, but he disguised them as spies. He said they were spies. He decided to explain themselves, where they are coming from, and they said they even have one of the brother that was still at home, not with them. But Joseph didn't want to believe them. He was looking for something. He had a plan, but he also already knew them. So his brother Benjamin was one that was left at home. He wanted to see his brother because they were like same mother. That was how he gave them, or he packaged everything. He gave them a condition. He gave them all the food, but he still put their money back into their bags to go back to Canaan land. Wisdom was at play at this particular incident too. Imagine if he realized, he recognizes them at once. He started putting them in jail and he just wanted to kill them for revenge. But he didn't do that. Just didn't do that upon all the betrayal. Now he sent them back. He said, let them go and bring that one that is remaining for him to be able to believe that yes, they are not spies. And they left one of their brother as a shorty. That was how they went back. They went there, they explained to their father things that happened. They were surprised when they saw their money back in their sacks full. These people didn't take a little of any penny of their money. And there was a reason to this as well, which we will still see. You see that now, at the end of the day, his brother, they explained his father didn't want to leave to release Benjamin to them, to come to Egypt with Benjamin. But they explained to him till the father bowed to the pressure and he allowed them to go. They went there and Joseph already knew them from the start. He saw his brother Benjamin. He was happy to the point he cried. Still yet, they didn't know that Joseph was their brother, but he already knew all of them. Still yet, he didn't take any revenge step till he allowed all of them he arranged a feast for all of them as a family. Still, they were surprised why he was doing that as somebody of his status in Egypt. But because he knew them, till when he has finished arranging that feast for them, they have eaten, he gave Benjamin, his brother, from same mother, much portion than the other brothers. This was how the whole story went, and at the end of the day, he revealed himself to his brothers. Now, let's read this particular aspect where he revealed himself to his brothers, where they now knew everything that has been playing all along. I want us to look at Genesis 45 from verse 3. Now, we are going to read this particular aspect. From Genesis 45 from 3 says, Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. His brothers were feeling sorry for themselves. They were feeling already guilty when they realized that Joseph was their brother whom they have sold young years ago, which they think he was already dead or somewhere they might not know again. Verse 4 said, And Joseph said to his brothers, Please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourself because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. These are the lessons. Can you imagine the wisdom, the understanding that came out of Joseph at this particular instance, where he was supposed to be feeling grieved, anger to kill, or malice to revenge? But he was telling that this is God that has sent him before them to save lives. This famine was coming. God has seen it right how many years before, and he knows what he was going to do in the lives of Joseph. Joseph was an instrument to save lives. Joseph said to preserve. Reading continues, you see that he said from 6, For these 2 years in famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. This particular aspect blew my mind. His understanding, his level of wisdom. He said, You people were not going to send me here. It was God to preserve the posterity. How many can understand, have this wisdom, or allowed not to be influenced by emotion or anger, but have this level of wisdom of Joseph to see that sometimes some disappointment that comes into our life is not mere human beings. Sometimes they can't even help it. It is God that is pushing people in our lives to do certain things, whether betrayal, whether bad, whether good. Sometimes it is God. look at it in that particular aspect. Ask for God's direction. Joseph didn't take this thing as human orchestration, but as God pushing him. And because he took it in good faith, that's why it was able to lead him to the right path. You as a believer or a human particularly, you can just check your life. A lot of things happen to you, bad things, but the way you take them sometimes goes a long way to also tell God how you are fixed on him, how you are listening to God. Joseph was above the level of human operations. He was operating in the divine, in the spirit of God. He understands a lot of things about spiritual mysteries. These are mysteries in our lives, particularly. A lot of things happen, bad things, but sometimes they are meant for them to lift you into your glory. But when you take them the other way, imagine if Joseph has taken his brother the other way. A lot of things will have gone wrong, or he will have missed his opportunity because of malice and anger. Imagine if he was looking for a way to go back to Canaan to go and kill his brother or to go and report, but he left everything. He was just focused on following the direction of God. And following the story ahead, he sent his brothers to go bring his family back, everything out of the land of Canaan land. He said the family is still coming. How many? 5 years to come. Let them come so that they will be saved. Because the famine was severe. Even Egypt, food finished. People were coming to Joseph to tell him, please, don't let us to die. So at the end of the day, if you see check his everything, he brought the whole. That was how Israelites moved to the land of Egypt and stayed in Goshen. The Pharaoh allowed them to stay in the best part of the land and continue. You see that at the end of the day, they lived good. They were multiplying, and his father just Jacob died. Now I want you to also look lastly about something here. When their father died, his brothers were started feeling back the guilt of what they have done to Joseph. They now feel that maybe since he was doing those things, maybe because of his father was alive, now maybe he might come back full wrath on them. Let's look at Genesis 50 from verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespasses of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now, therefore, do not be afraid, I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Now, Joseph said everything as it is today, it is what the Lord has brought. Even when his brother were still feeling that guilt, even imagine how many years has passed, they were still feeling guilt, they were begging him. But Joseph still maintained who he is in the spirit of God, in the divine guidance of God. He didn't feel malice against his brothers. As believers, it is an error for us to always see any evil or to look paying back revenge as a will of God, or to take it into our own hands. Sometimes the lesson here is the fact that God uses bad things sometimes to push us into our glory. And we must not fail to see that good in our lives for us to be able to maximize those opportunities, those directions in our lives. I believe this message will bless you today, and you have gained insight to living a good life that aligns with God.